Previously on Higurashi When They Cry console arcs. Hey, Natsumi. Is it so hard to see your true self?
何を
Because you really have an aggressive personality, don't you? Letting it out is better than keeping it locked inside. Giving a beating is better than taking a beating. Making someone cry is better than crying yourself. And, rather than being killed, killing is. Huh? Am I wrong? If that's the case, I'll leave right here. Are you okay with that? Are you? You can hide your thoughts forever. Let them accumulate. Wait it out. And keep on struggling to breathe until you die. It's your choice. That might be a nice way to go. But are you really okay with that? Even if it means losing the things most precious to you. Totokun seemed really shocked earlier. Would it be alright to hate him for that? It was getting closer. That person made a racket as they slowly came up the hallway behind me.
もう大丈夫だからね。だから泣かないでね。
Standing 5 meters away. 4, 3.
大丈夫だから安心してね。
2, 1. Just a little more. Come quickly. And on my neck. I felt an uncomfortable breath and turned back.
夏美ちゃん。おばあちゃん。
Before pushing her down, I double-checked the preparations.
バイバイ。
I took the initiative and swung my arms. The odor encircled the area. An extraordinary stagnant air. I couldn't help but vomit. No good. I won't let that slow me down. I'm absolutely going to grab hold of that happiness.
夏美？わかってるよね。お父さんもお母さんもこのままじゃ私たち幸せになれないって。
I looked back at the two of them, panting in terror, and said that with a smile on my face.
高校生の女の子が祖母を殺害。もし新聞に載ったらお父さんは失業だね。お母さんも友達がいなくなって親戚からも絶縁で村には帰れない。あ、もうガス災害でほとんどいないかね。あんた自分の言ってること分かってるの？
Unfortunately, she really doesn't. She's lost her fucking mind.
そんな何もかもうまくいってたのに幸せな日々を取り戻せると思ったのにお母さんとお父さん二人して台無しにするつもりなの？
夏美、目を覚ましなさい。現実を受け止めるんだ。
嫌だよ。そんなの嫌。
The next moment, after I finished crying out, another thought came to me. Yes, I've already killed one person. Even if that escalated to 2 or 3 people, would that really change anything? Yes? It wouldn't change anything, right? Even as things are now, if I'm caught, I won't be able to go back to my old life. You're not living your old life right now, you delusional little twit!
やめなさい。もうやめるんだ。 夏美さん
The police? That can't be. How did they get here so soon? Yes, listening to the voice in the core of my mind, I was able to return to myself for a moment. As I screamed that, something inside me snapped, and the thread that was holding me together was cut.
お前、私が全部消したはずなのに、どうしてそんなはずな。
Then, my consciousness was swallowed by the darkness, and everything vanished.
やあね、赤坂さんの推理通り、彼女は確かに両親に対して激しい感情を抱き続けていた。で、それを抑制していた薬が切れたことで、バーンとやっちゃった。それは間違いないと思うんですが、二つに分かれていたのは、感情だけの話じゃなかったんじゃないかってね。
感情以外って、例えば
Memories?
つまり、記憶。もっと言えば、人格ってやつも二つに分かれていたんじゃないかって。
So what? You're telling me that her medication also suppressed a form of DID in her?
記憶と人格が二つに
At the same time, I had a hard time accepting Ushi-san's theory. So am I. It seemed clear enough. If what he said was correct, then Natsumi Kimiyoshi suffered from dual personality disorder, essentially having two independent personalities coexisting in a single body. Suddenly, this innocuous girl was able to say such a terrible thing without a second thought. For a moment, I doubted my ears. What is this girl? This killing she just mentioned. Who?
別に隠さなくてもいいよ。お姉ちゃんって人殺しなんだよね。何を言って。私もお姉ちゃんと同じだよ。パパとママのことずっと前から大嫌い。だっていつもああしろこうしろってうるさくて、おじいちゃんが来てからは喧嘩ばっかり。そのせいで私、友達からもいじめられて、お化け屋敷に住んでるお化けだって言われて、それでも私が我慢してるのに、健太郎は全然泣き止まないし、家族って邪魔だよね。それこそ殺さない限り。だから殺したんでしょ。お姉ちゃんが出なきゃここに入院するわけないもんね。ね？逃げるなら今だよ。逃げるってどうして？だってお姉ちゃんまだ殺し足りないって顔してるよ。まだいるんでしょ？殺したい人。
I decide who it should be. Even though you sustained significant injuries, you're still out there. You, who worked so hard to take my happiness from me. Who, Chisato? You! That's right. You're still out there. I am not even going to try to verbalize whatever the hell that is.
君吉さん、どうしました？君吉さん。しまった。すぐに署に連絡。急げ。
みんな死んじゃえ。
And so it continues. Greetings, my name is Neosekken, and welcome back to my Let's Play of the Higurashi When They Cry console arcs. So, one last killing spree. Natsumi wants to go on one last killing spree now that the walls have effectively closed in on her. But I still can't help but wonder, is this really it? After this killing spree of hers that she's going to try to go on ends one way or another, will we finally get some kind of definite conclusion to this arc? Because while I may be the only one who feels this way, I still can't help but feel like as though this arc has dragged on a lot longer than I feel it really needed to. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm happy the last few episodes have finally started introducing some really interesting plot developments and information about dear old Natsumi herself that definitely makes things interesting, not just for this arc, but in retrospect, recontextualizes the events of the previous arc in also a pretty interesting way. Even if I still have a couple minor questions about the actual logistics on how it all played out the way it did. But I'm just ready to move on to a new arc at this point. So, let's get started. The same day, Saiki General Hospital. I didn't have great memories of this hospital rooftop. The sunset sky was truly beautiful. I could hear the cry of the Higurashi off in the distance, and soft wind washed away all my thoughts as it blew across my cheeks, leaving me content. However, I didn't know you had a sister. Thanks to this lovely scenery, I couldn't help but think back to that time. That girl was always following me around. Wait a minute. Is this the girl you've been referencing on and off up until this point?
このベンチに座っていろんな話をしてあげたんだよな。
I gently caressed the bench. The paint was peeling off due to weather exposure. As I sat my crutches down next to the bench, I thought back to the old days. Nobody would believe it, but originally, I didn't enjoy being such an extrovert. Sitting somewhere quietly seemed like a better way to rest and relax. The reason I decided to try and get better at talking with others was because I was able to make her laugh. She was such a good listener. She always listened carefully, and she laughed so much when I finished my stories. That's why I put in the effort to get better at talking to other people. Really, I loved it. She was so honest, so cheerful, and she always believed in me. My little sister, Kaori. I'd given anything just to see her smile. I believed that I could do anything if it would make her happy. But I betrayed that trust. For all the things I said and thought in my heart, when it came time to act, I hesitated.
何がイケイケのちーちゃんだ。バカ野郎。
When I thought back on it, convincing myself that I took immediate action was a downright lie. Deep down, I was an indecisive coward. Really, it's a terribly unfortunate story. Even though she was born into a doctor's family, nobody noticed that Kaori had a serious illness until her condition progressed to life-threatening levels. The fact that she was so patient and tolerant might have worked against her, too. At any rate, Kaori suddenly collapsed one day, and was brought in for an examination. Then the doctors gave us the worst possible prognosis. However, there was still a way to save her. Indeed, there was still something we could do for her.
移植？私の骨髄を？
ああ、父さんと母さんは不適合だが、お前なら血液の HLA が香りの方と同じでドナーになれるんだ。香りのためにやってくれるな。
私は。
大丈夫だ。お前と香りの手術にはうちの病院でも一番信頼のおける医師にやらせる。お前の体には何のマイナス要素も残さないよ。
You hesitated giving the bone marrow to her, and that hesitation ultimately led to something very unfortunate, didn't it? Is that where you're going with this? Dad tried to encourage me, but I was still young. I was terrified of what would happen if they cut me open. There was nothing that could be done. Plus, I was the daughter of the hospital director, so I had seen my fair share of material about medical accidents in the news. Even if it was for Kaori, even if the probability of failure was close to zero, I just couldn't bring myself to say yes. I said that I needed time to think, and I avoided giving them an immediate answer.
香りの病状が急変したのはそのすぐ後だった。
They rushed to prepare for transplant surgery, but by then, it was already too late. There was nothing left to do. When Kaori held my hand between both of her little hands, I felt like my hand was being crushed by the mountain of guilt and regret. And then,
お姉ちゃん、退院したらお姉ちゃんとケーキ食べたいな。
those were her last words. After that, she wouldn't reply, no matter how much I called out. Her little hands were still firmly wrapped around my hand, and never moved again.
先生、私何でもします。血液でも心臓でも何でも好きなだけ持ってっていい。だから香りを生き返らせてお願いします。お願いします。
I desperately cried out to the doctor standing beside me. I knew that it was already too late, but I just didn't want to admit it. Even after we laid Kaori to rest, I never stopped apologizing to her.
ごめんなさい。ごめんなさい。ごめんなさい。ごめんなさい。ごめんなさい。
Not even 10 minutes have passed, and I'm already in a very depressed mood now. No matter how much I begged for forgiveness, I knew I'd never be forgiven. I knew there was nothing I could do to make up for this. Really, a moment of hesitation created an eternity of regret. And for the longest time, I was unable to accept that. So, I directed my burning anger and hatred toward the doctors and my parents, who couldn't do anything to help Kaori. If only they had noticed Kaori's condition earlier. If only they tried hard to encourage me to go along with the operation. If I was able to make the right decision, Kaori wouldn't have had died. Thanks to that, I decided that the only way to clear up the melancholy thoughts in my heart was to lash out with selfish behavior. The selfish and cruel daughter of the hospital director. That's who I was back then. After seeing the absurdity of this world, I hated my miserable, detestable fate from the bottom of my heart. I understood the truth, though. Honestly, the mistake was all mine, and I just refused to accept it. Tomoko and Akira were probably the only ones who knew the truth. If I hadn't met Mamoru, and I hadn't been admonished by my parents so many times, there is no way I could have crawled up from the bottom of that abyss.
あれからもう6年か。
I gently touched the handrail on the iron fence. Back then, I couldn't reach it if I held my hand all the way out. But now, I'm even able to rest my elbow on it. Even so, it still felt like it was only yesterday, like time hadn't advanced at all for me. Indeed, I was still as indecisive as ever. Even though I knew it was pointless, I thought back. The moment I learned that Natsumi was from Hinamizawa, I should have offered her a helping hand. But in the end, I couldn't do it. If I had done that, Natsumi might not have been driven so far over the edge. Even when she attacked me in front of the care center. If I had told the detectives immediately that Natsumi was the attacker, she would have been arrested before she had the chance to cause that tragic incident at home. It was all because I took too long to make a decision. Unfortunately, I allowed my friend to walk into this miserable tragedy.
友達か。
Then, what could I do for her as a friend? From then on, I kept thinking about that. Isn't it a friend's duty to be compassionate in the first place? I think a friend's duty is to be honest with the other person, even if you have to be uncompassionate at times. Because there are just times where sometimes you gotta say or do something for another person that they may not necessarily want to hear or have you do for them for their own good. Because no one else will. So, yeah, I think honesty is ultimately more important than just being compassionate. If we're talking about friendship. To create a fun and happy space. To lend a hand when you're in trouble. In that case, I probably should have done that for her. Of course, it might be ridiculously conceited of me to think it would work. Still, how on earth was I so lacking as a friend that I missed that? What would it take for me to become a proper friend for her?
なんか変だよね、それって。
Did I really make a conscious effort to become a friend in the first place? You have to truly understand the way they think, and you have to feel comfortable around them, not just become friends for your own selfish reasons, right? If you like each other and understand each other, then naturally.
ああ、そっか。
I understood. I finally understood. Though it might already be too late, I realized what I was missing. I wanted to know more about her, but I never truly knew her.
こんな時に今更って感じだけどね。だけど、え？
The next moment. Hello, Natsumi. I heard the loud echo of the roof access door being opened. Looking back to see who it was, I instantly froze. Standing right there, it was.
夏美。
No doubt, the person standing there was Natsumi Kimiyoshi.
夏美。どうして。
Why had she come here? No. How was she able to come here? I threw those natural questions towards Natsumi. Then, slowly, Natsumi had a cold expression as she slowly approached with her right hand hidden behind her back, then lifted it above her head. In her hand, she was holding a dimly glinting knife.
夏。
Natsumi let out a terrible laugh as she locked the door behind her with her other hand. The rooftop door was different from the other rooms. It required a key to open from inside. I also heard the key was recently lost, and they were still waiting to receive a spare. What kind of idiot designs a door like that? That meant this rooftop was essentially a closed room.
なるほど。
Natsumi was still feeling animosity. To her, Hinamizawa was a shackle of injustice wrapped around her and her family. And not only did I know about her Hinamizawan heritage, but she also believed that I was trying to take away the man she loved, Akira. The same Natsumi who slaughtered her parents and grandmother the other day. In other words, I was the only one left.
どうしたの？逃げないの？助けを呼ばないの？
逃げるって。どこに？助けも誰に言えばいいのさ。
With cold sweat dripping down my entire body, I answered with a bitter smile. There was nothing to be surprised about. Somewhere in my heart, I must have been expecting this to happen.
驚かないんだね。私が千里ちゃんを殺しに来たこと。じゃあ、理由、分かってるんだよね。
あんたをそこまで追い込んだ責任の一端は感じてるよ。だから、殺されることに納得はいかないけど、理解はできる。だけど、もし質問 OK なら、あんたは私を殺した後どうするのか、それだけは聞いておきたいね。
さあ、そんな先のことはわからないよ。
先って言っても、どう見積もっても10分足らず後のことじゃん。すぐのことだよ。うるさい！
The birds standing on the fence scattered when they heard that shout, and the Higurashi fell silent for a moment. Damn, even the Higurashi were spooked silent. Natsumi suddenly bore her fangs as she cried out in anger. But why? Unlike before, I didn't feel an ounce of fear. Was I prepared to atone for my sins? Was I willing to walk down the road to oblivion together with her? Sorry, but that's not happening. Right. That's my answer. I won't run away anymore. I was feeling lost and scared, just like I did with Kaori. But I've already felt a mountain of regret over that. And I've apologized enough. If this is my fate, I'll have to accept it as it is. Yes, I'm prepared for this. I've already seen this change in Natsumi, so I'm not afraid.
お前は私を裏切った。信じてたのに。友達だって信じてたのに。裏切って東堂君との仲を邪魔しようとした。そして私のことを警察に売った。許せない。許せない。
Certainly. There was no point arguing the latter. Oh, I could argue it just fine. When I told the police about Natsumi's attack, they went to investigate. And they arrived on the scene right as she murdered her parents, excuse me. So they apprehended her before she had an opportunity to escape. So maybe, if I had kept quiet, she might have been able to conceal the crime of killing her parents. But even if she was able to hide it, what future did she have after that? No matter how hard she tried to maintain the lie, it would be impossible to keep the truth hidden forever. So, in the end, that particular argument was probably invalid. However, it would be selfish to completely disregard the present situation like that.
どうしたの？自分の罪の重さに声も出ない？怖さに涙も出ない？でももう遅いんだから。いくら謝ったって自分の罪の重さを悔やんだとしても。
誰が謝るか、このボケ。頭冷やして出直してきやがれ。
Gonna provoke her, are we? Surprised, Natsumi's eyes opened for a moment, but she quickly recovered her original coldness. Nevertheless, I was surprised to get a reaction out of her. But based on her expression, I realized an unpleasant situation was developing. Gee, you think?
私があんたを裏切った。その言葉、そっくりそのままお返しするよ。
You freaking better.
先に裏切ったのはあんたの方だろ、夏美。南沢の出身だってことを隠して、こそこそうじうじしててさ。見ていて気分悪かったよ。下手な嘘つき続けて、悲劇のヒロインごっこで酔ってんじゃないよ、この読書オタク。
This is it. I'll take my destiny in my own hands. I won't back down. But ultimately I needed to fulfill my obligations as a friend, so I turned to Natsumi.
だいたいね、出身がどうので差別されるなんて話。悪いけど、私は大災害とかが起きるまで南沢なんてところ全然知らなかったし、興味もなかったよ。だって私はこの町で生まれて育ったんだから。なのに私の町の自慢しただけで田舎者だってバカにしただのどうのって。自分の町を自慢してどこが悪い？バカにされたって思うのはあんたのコンプレックスだろ。ひがんで言いがかりつけてんじゃないよ、このタコ。黙れ！
どんなに言い訳してもお前が東堂君のことで裏切ったのは事実だ。私を違う大学に行かせて二人の間を裂こうとしたじゃないか。
はあ？しっかり思い出しな。美咲大を選んだのはあんただろ。陸王大も紹介したけど、今の実力じゃ現役合格は難しいからって断念したのも。
とぼけるな！東堂君が陸王大に行ってお前も一緒に行くって分かってたらすぐに断念したりするものか。私にそうさせるよう仕向けておいて私に責任を転嫁するな。
ああ、それは偶然そうなったんだから仕方ないでしょ。陸王大はそもそも私の昔からの第一志望なんだから。私あんたに言わなかったっけ？絶対言ったよ。私は覚えてる。で、アキラが死亡したのは偶然だし、そもそもあいつの死亡って私のずっと後に提出したのよ。むしろそれなら裏切ったのはアキラってことになるんじゃない？
Using that train of logic, I'd say she's got a point.
嘘だ！ お前が東堂君をそそのかしたんだ。
はあなお一層にバカかあんたは。その程度で動くような男ならこの先どうやってうまくやっていく気だよ。言っとくがね、地球上の約半分は女なんだよ。どれだけあんたがアキラに目隠しして周りの女の子を遠ざけたとしても、その空いた隙間から誘惑かけるやつは山ほど出てくるさ。そんな状況になってもよそに行かないよう惚れさせておくのが彼女の最低の義務だろうが。
You call her a bastard, but you know she's right.
どうした？頭きたんならかかっておいで。
Before I could finish that sentence, Natsumi rushed at me with a kitchen knife in hand. My body stiffened for a moment. But still, she was acting out of an emotional outburst, so her movements were straightforward and easy to predict. I just barely moved my body to the side to evade her attack, and she stumbled as her leg slammed into mine. Natsumi briefly lost control of her momentum, but quickly resumed her advance. I staggered for a moment to regain my footing, but managed to maintain my position and turn around.
ほらほら、どうしたお兄さん。あんたの憎きちいちゃんはこっちだよ。
Natsumi rose to her feet in a fit of rage, then slashed with the kitchen knife too, 3 times in a wide arc. The tip grazed my clothes and left a red streak along my skin. When the attack came up empty, I countered by grabbing her outstretched arm and vigorously pulling it close to my body. Then, I struck her sharply on the back, and she bent down in a coughing fit. I grabbed her by the collar and then used a judo throw to drop her to the ground. Then, once more. After suffering the pain of being thrown to the ground 3 times, Natsumi finally loosened her grip on the knife. The moment I noticed that opportunity, I stomped on her wrist with all the strength in my entire body. Then I kicked the weapon as far away as I could. Couldn't have handled it better myself. Bravo!
なめんなよこら。こちとら今までそれなりに場数踏んできてんだ。刃物振り回してきたって固まって動けなくなるとでも思ったか。運動音痴のあんたが逆立ちしたって力で叶うと思うなよ。
Pressing the attack with the momentum I built up, I pushed Natsumi down on her back and straddled her like a horse, then grabbed her by the collar again.
だいたいね、何が裏切っただ。友達じゃないだ。あんたの言う信頼ってのは自分の言うことを何でもホイホイ聞いてくれる関係で、それを叶えてくれるやつが友達か。だったらおあいにくさまだね。私は気に入らない頼みは遠慮なくお断りする正直者で、文句だって手だっていくらでも出す性分さ。それから自分の期待通りのものが返ってこなかったからって怒るのは結構だけどさ、それじゃああんたは私たちに何をしてくれたよ。どんなことでお返しをしてくれたの。言えないでしょ。言いたいことも言わず自分ばっかりいい子気取っていい思いして、私たちのことは知らんぷりなんて、それで友達かよ。
お前に私の何がわかるって言うんだ。
Nothing, because you never really talked. Should I tell her what I know about her awful condition? That she brings up specious? I'm gonna go with specious. Circumstances as an excuse to put herself on a pedestal and disregard the people around her? Alright. If it's come to this, I'll tell her how I honestly feel.
ああ、わからないさ。わかりたくもないね。あんたの田舎じゃあうんの呼吸で思いが通じ合えるのかもしれないけどね。あいにく私は超能力者でも心理学者でもないんだ。言葉にしてくれなきゃ伝わらないし、あんたの気持ちもさっぱりわかりゃしないんだよ。そんな風に甘え根性だから、あんたはいつまでたっても田舎者で、この町じゃよそ者扱いなんだ。
お前は。
That moment, Natsumi sunk her teeth deep into my hand. Frightened, I pulled my hand back and raised my head. Natsumi pushed me away, and I noticed a hint of desperation in her eyes as I tumbled back. Then, when I managed to scramble to my feet, I saw Natsumi off in the distance picking up the knife that I kicked away earlier. Then, she turned toward me, her rage flaring up brighter than before.
ありゃできんじゃん。さすが田舎育ち。
I wiped away the sweat running down my forehead at the back of my hand. When I looked at the sleeve of my pajamas, I noticed it was covered in reddish black spots. Apparently, I had blood flowing from an open wound, mixing together with my sweat.
まったく、何の人気映画だよ。
Though, those usually result in manly fistfights. Come to think of it, I don't think I've seen many of those fights between two girls. I grabbed one of the crutches I had set down next to the bench, and held it up with both hands to block the knife. When Natsumi saw that, she pulled back for a moment to assess the situation. But shortly thereafter, she let out a bold laugh with a twisted expression on her face.
何がおかしいのさ。
やっぱりだ。やっぱりお前は嘘つきだ。こんな風に殴って投げ飛ばして痛めつけたくなるくらい私のことを嫌ってたくせに。
You're the one that showed up with the express intent to murder her with a knife!
今までよくも友達を語ってくれたな。
ああ、そうかい。勝手に思う分は自由さ。けどそれならあんたはどうなのよ。友達だと思ってたくせに、よくもその相手に刃物振り回せるもんだね。
Thank you!
友達なものか。お前なんか嫌いだ。大嫌いだ。初めて会った時からずっと嫌いだった。
また矛盾したことを言いやがって。そんなに嫌いならなんで最初話に乗ってきた。私を拒んだりしなかった。あんたもともと一人が大好きだったんだろ。最初から嫌がってりゃ望み通りにしてやったのに。なったまれ。これで分かったでしょ夏美。私も大概だけどあんたも十分嘘つきさ。自分を偽って勝手に事実をでっち上げて。ほんと頭にくるくらい昔の私にそっくりだよ。
嘘だ。嘘だ。何もかも恵まれてるお前と私のどこが似ているって言うんだ。
恵まれてるだなら聞くがね。あんたは本当の絶望ってやつを味わったことがあるか。どんなに言い訳してもやり直せない。元に戻らない。それを後悔して何もかもが嫌になって、それでも終わりにできない辛さをあんたは知ってるのか。
いいじゃない。綺麗事だって。いつか死ぬ直前になって自分の記憶の中を真っ黒に塗りつぶしたくなるような思いをするくらいならずっとそっちの方がマシよ。やってみたこともやってみようとも思わなかったあなたにそんなこと言わせない。私が味わった地獄まで否定するな。
Why? How could I hear that detective's voice? In a place like this. I can see it all over the girl in front of me. It looks just like that detective's face back then.
どう？知らないでしょ。知ってるわけがない。だってあんたは失敗を隠そうとしてさらに失敗を重ねてごまかしてきただけなんだから。今回のように。それで借金に借金を重ねて払いきれなくなったから自己破産か。全ての負債をぶっ壊してチャラにする気か。これで分かったでしょ。つまりあんたの狂気ってのはただの責任転嫁の産物なんだよ。
Natsumi pushed forward. I continued using the crutches to parry her attacks, which would prove fatal if I wasn't careful. Of course, I abstained from attacking her myself, as it would be far too risky. But I couldn't afford to say much to her either.
くそ、さすがにクラクラするな。
The blood loss was finally catching up to me. At this point, I might be stuck at this hospital a while longer. Though, it might be wishful thinking to believe I'll survive this as long as I'm hospitalized.
殺してやる。お前だけは絶対殺してやる。
ああ、殺したきゃ殺せ。それで終わりにするならね。本当なら数日前に私はあんたに殺されてたんだ。それが1日2日伸びたからってどうってことないさ。だけどあんた私を殺してその後どうするっての？気に入らない奴はみんな殺して自分の世界から追い出して、どこまで行ったらあんたの気は済むのさ。あんたの理想の幸せってのは真っ暗な何にもない世界でたった一人でいることか。
Natsumi was startled by that. Her shoulders suddenly drooped. Then, with her eyes opened wide, for a moment, she stopped and loosened her grip. Hearing the word alone brought back memories. Despite the voice in my head echoing, "Kill, kill," until a moment ago, I thought back to that time. Back then, I was certainly alone. My parents decided to transfer me without asking me what I wanted. They put me in a high school I wasn't qualified to be in and justified it by saying it's close to home. As though my efforts until that point meant nothing, like they didn't even belong in this world. The classwork was unreasonable, and the classmates had a completely different atmosphere. No matter where I looked or how I thought about it, I felt completely out of place, like I was just floating along. It was depressing. It was hard. It was embarrassing. It felt empty. It was hard to breathe. But despite all that, from that day forward, I worked hard every day. I improved my grades. And even though I wasn't very good at dealing with other people, I managed to make some close friends. Being forced to start over in a new place meant building everything up from scratch. And that overwhelmed me with dark, oppressive despair. What could I do? I was sick of it. I wanted things to get easier. The strange things the other kids said to me. The cold looks they gave me. And even if I tried to straighten things out, they'd push me down with harsh words and make me hate myself. I've tasted that feeling before, so being alone again would be fine. Plus, if my effort will result in nothing in the end, Wouldn't it be better to not bother right from the start? Right, I muttered to myself. I gave up everything. Back then.
何かお困りかね、転校生さん。や、こんちは。今日もいい天気だね。
A girl suddenly came over to me and spoke in a friendly tone.
面白いね、あなた。
When she called me interesting, I was truly happy. Now's the first time anyone said I was interesting. I always did my best to keep up with everyone, never thinking about what kind of person I wanted to be myself.
改めて、はじめまして。私は牧村たま子。このクラスの学級委員長をやっています。よろしくね、君吉さん。
私は佐伯千里。よろしくね。
Simply because they introduced themselves to me, I felt that the two of them would become good friends. I was relieved. I was definitely happy. Right. That's right. Honestly, I hated being alone. So much. For the longest time, even before I got sick, I always wanted to have someone there for me. But after being betrayed, I was terrified of losing it. And that fear grew stronger and stronger. So I struggled to believe that. And then...
私もね、あなたと同じように絶望して、何もかも信じられなくなったことがある。たった一人で悩んで、苦しんで、どうして私だけがこんな目にって、世の中すべてを恨んだりもしたわ。でもね、何も信じられないのって、本当に辛いことなの。疑えば疑うほど、周りの人は私のことを信じてくれなくて、どんどん離れていく。みんな。だからずっと自分が一人ぼっちで、寂しくて、怖くて、悲しくて。夏美さん、あなたは耐えられるの？私には耐えられなかった。
Me too. I was just like that detective. Always struggling to endure it. Just the thought of being alone made me feel sad and terrified. So even if it hurt, I had to push myself. But it's already too late. Only if you allow it to be that way. You can just stop swinging. Put the knife down and just stop. After everything that's happened, things will never go back to the way they were. In that case, where do I go from here? Nowhere but forward. I've been selfishly running away until now, destroying everything in my path. So what does that leave me with? The agonized expression on Natsumi's face indicated that she was struggling to make a decision. Once I saw that, I was convinced. It's still not too late. She hasn't fallen so far into the darkness that she'll never come back. If that's the case, I can call her back. Even if it's impossible, at the very least, I can try to reach her.
あんたの夏美の気持ちは私にもわかる。でもだったらなんでそこまで幸せになりたいなら、あんたは自分で努力しないの？頑張らないの？あんたにはそれができる力があるのに。 私が望んでも手に入らないいいところいっぱい数えきれないほどあるのに、どうして？
It may not have been very long, but for the two of us, with all the things that have been happening until now, time has been wasting away. Then,
私だって。
finally, that was exhausting. The burning glow in Natsumi's cold eyes gradually dispersed, and they began to fill with massive tears. The timid look on Natsumi's face looked completely different from the wicked expression she wore until a moment ago. However, even though I had no basis to think so, I was confident that the face in front of me was Natsumi's real face.
私だってずっと努力してきた。いろんなこと我慢して、おかしな人間だってひなみ様の犯罪者だって思われたくないから、みんなに合わせて従って。だけどみんな分かってくれなかった。私にどんどんいろんなこと勝手にわけのわからない決めつけをかけて追い込んできて、辛かったのに、本当に私辛かったのに。
夏美。
That was the darkness the real Natsumi had been hiding all this time. The sadness, the inferiority complex, those dark emotions were able to accumulate. She hated being from a rural town near Hinamizawa. She hated thinking that she was inferior to kids from the city, and those thoughts haunted her far too often. She was forced to suppress her wishes and aspirations, and she continued to endure it. Right. She always endured it. And even if it was only for a short while, it must have felt like an eternity. Desperately trying to keep herself under control and fit in with her surroundings. That couldn't possibly be easy for a girl with no self-confidence. I was finally able to understand. This girl was just struggling to figure out the right way to do everything. Schoolwork, her values, her identity in the city, socializing with the people around her, her future, her aspirations. She lost sight of who she was in the chaos of all those things. In all her efforts to be normal like everyone else, she struggled and went astray. And then, it broke her. So, the most important thing she needed was an act of kindness, compassion. She had a tendency to take the things other people said to heart and acknowledge them. So if that happened, she would try to make amends to steer herself toward that goal.
みんな助けてくれなかった。私何度も助けてほしいってお願いしたのに、みんなと同じになりたかったのに。ひなみさんのこと、家族のこと、どうすればいいかわかんなくなって。だから私、こうするしかいい方法が思いつかなかった。
Of course. So, I need to step forward. Right now, she's not just looking for some superficial notion of friendship. The one thing Natsumi truly needs is someone who can stand with her and talk to her, who she can truly open her heart to. Approach her slowly, whatever you do. There's still a part of me that can't help but worry that she's just putting on an act.
あんた、バカか!
You I don't think, I mean, most of me doesn't think she is, but there's just that tiny part of me that just can't help but be paranoid.
辛かったんならやめちまえばよかったんでしょ。一人で考えるくらいなら吐き出せばよかったんじゃない。何のための友達よ。何のために私たちがいるんだよ。
The one thing Natsumi wanted most was for someone to simply acknowledge her existence. She wanted to have a will of her own, to have the courage to think for herself, to get lost and make choices. And she was just looking for a friend to share that with.
大体なんでそこで抱えるのよ。あんたのそれは努力なんかじゃない。勝手に諦めてそこで立ち止まっただけじゃないの。夏美、努力ってのは我慢じゃないんだよ。頑張るってのは気持ちを曲げることじゃないんだよ。自分の思いを相手に分かってもらえるまで説得して理解してもらってちゃんと実現させることが努力だって言うんだよ。
Yes. Only now was I able to understand. Finally. I finally understood the true nature of what I needed to do for Natsumi. Anyone in a group can have trouble speaking up about the things they need. So, you can't ignore the people around you. If you just keep your wishes locked away, the pain will become unbearable. In that case, you have to share your thoughts with the people around you. Let them know how you feel. If you can convince others to understand your wishes, surely they'll come true. And up until now, we haven't been doing that. Instead, we've been afraid of hurting others, and afraid they'll hurt us, avoiding the problem. But it's different now. To be a true friend, sometimes it's necessary to clash over your ideals. So it may be necessary to fight. It may take a while before you're able to reach an understanding. However, by doing so, you'll be able to resolve all your doubts, reservations, and misunderstandings. Because friends who are able to share their true feelings are more precious than anything else.
夏美。
I tossed aside the crutches I had in my hands and walked over to Natsumi. Even if she went into another violent outburst, I didn't care.
私さ、あんたにずっと悪いことしたって思ってた。あんたのことちゃんと理解して力を貸してあげられなくて。でもさ、夏美、それはお互い様だよ。あんたも私たちのこと全然分かってくれてなかった。力を貸してって頼ってくれなかった。だから私、もうあんたに謝らない。だけど。
After saying that, I walked right up in front of Natsumi, still holding that kitchen knife, and turned straight towards her.
その代わりさ、私、これからはあんたにちゃんと向き合うよ。そしてちゃんと夏美の話を聞く。その代わり、夏美も私の話を聞いて。お願い。だからさ、夏美、もう一度、一緒。もう私は、絶対間違えない。あんたとずっと友達で、あんたのこと、いつまでもどこまでも信じ続ける。 だから私のこともダメかな。
The rage in Natsumi until a moment ago began to diminish, and her shoulders started to droop. Then she faintly nodded to me. Seeing her like that, I held my slashed and battered hand out to her with all my might.
もう遅いよ。
Nevertheless, Natsumi looked at me with tears in her eyes as she said that.
私いっぱい大切な人を殺してしまった。お母さん、お父さん、おばあちゃん、3人になんて謝って償えばいいのかわかんないし、それにだんだん私が私じゃなくなってきて、頭の中もうむちゃくちゃだもん。みんなを嫌って憎んで殺したいって気持ち、もう抑えられない。疲れちゃったの私。もう
If that's the case, there's only one answer. What I couldn't do for Kaori back then, I'll do it now, without a moment of hesitation.
なら私も付き合うよ。私あんたと一緒に地獄まで付き合ってあげる。きっと友達ってのはこうやって気持ちをぶつけ合えてやっと本物なんだよ。殴り合いなんて本当は良くないんだろうけどさ、今なら私心の底から夏美のことを友達だって。
千里ちゃん、
一人じゃ寂しいんでしょ。ならいいじゃん。もうあんた一人で背負う必要なんてない。一緒に落ちてあげるよ。さっきも言ったけど、本当なら数日前に亡くした命なんだからさ。
私
Yeah, that's it, Natsumi. You won't have to despair alone. I failed just as much as you before this. If this is how it ends, I'll be completely satisfied. So, you don't have to keep blaming yourself. If you want to reduce yourself to zero, I'll go with you. And if I see you again next time, I'll be able to do things properly. You're a true friend, Chisato.
やめろ君吉、夏美さん。
When Akira and Akasaka finally arrived, they found what looked like Chisato wrapped around Natsumi. Time came to a halt. Though the two of them were holding one another, they didn't move. Akasaka, Wushi, and Akira were crushed by the regret that they couldn't stop this tragedy. While staring at the two of them, all they could do was tremble. knife fell from Natsumi's hands and clattered along the ground. On that dazzlingly bright blade, there were no traces of blood.
夏美、
千里さん。
Natsumi trembled as she slowly raised her head. Her eyes, which were cloudy and empty until a while ago, began to glimmer and shine.
ごめん。ごめんね。思い出した。思い出したよ。
Huge tears began overflowing down her face.
初めて会った時から、さとちゃんは優しかった。私のこと、いつも気遣って、心配してくれた。
Why did I forget? Why? How could I think my precious friends hated me? I was throwing everything away, even my life. Even as I fell into darkness and despair, she continued reaching out to me with no regard for the danger. My irreplaceable best friend.
夏美、あんた。
それなのに私、いろんなことがあって怖くて、不安で、何を信じていいのかわからなくなって、ごめんなさい。ごめんなさい。ごめんなさい。
Natsumi pressed her face into Chisato's chest as more tears continued spilling out. While looking at that, Chisato realized that her precious friend, who she loved so much, had finally returned to her.
夏美！佐藤ちゃん！
Welcome back, Natsumi. I'm here, Chisato-chan. The happiness the two of them shared blurred and mixed together. The cry of the Higurashi echoed through the sunset sky. Thinking of a friend shows true kindness, and trying to face your hardships head on requires serious courage. It's not an easy thing to put into words. And even then, there's no guarantee that bringing the truth to light will lead to happiness. Even so, a deep darkness is buried in every heart. But when hit with a strong enough light, it can allow you to take that last step and leave the present behind. I'm not going to try to read this. I don't think it'll be fast enough, so you guys can read it on your own. So, she was declared not guilty for a reason of insanity, huh? Well, I mean, she's not locked up, and if she got the help that if she got all the help that she needed, then I mean, there's that. But all the same, life's not going to be easy for her ever again from that point onward, given what she's done. She'll have the reputation of being a family murderer hanging over her neck for the rest of her life. So, both she and her friends are going to have to work overtime to try to overcome it, I think. Given everything that's happened, I guess this really is the best outcome that we could reasonably hope for.
Eh, この道を進んで、それから。
あ、パパ、あそこに地図があるよ。
Hello, Miyuki. Miyuki pointed to a local directory as she said that. I compared the map with the directions written in the invitation, and determined that we would make it there if we just walked a little farther. I guess Miyuki hasn't seen snowfall this thick very often. She's been playing it since we left the station. This town didn't have many people coming and going, so the snow along the roadside was still fairly clean. It was a comfortable walk, and I left a neat trail of footprints behind me as I went.
こらこらみゆき、あんまり走り回ると危ないぞ。
平気だもー。
Miyuki answered vigorously, but she lost her footing shortly after and tumbled to the ground. Thankfully, she was wearing a raincoat. Since the ground was covered in soft snow, I didn't have to worry about her getting seriously hurt. But considering where we were headed, it didn't seem like proper behavior.
冷たい。雪って面白いね、パパ。
面白い？そうだな。
Really, you're the one that makes the snow interesting, Miyuki. I suddenly muttered in my head. Honestly, just looking at her smiling face warmed my heart. If I didn't have Miyuki in my life, how much worse would my life be?
今度休暇ができたらスキーにでも行こうか。そうだ、北海道はどうだい？大石さんも。みゆきが行けばきっと喜んでくれるよ。
大石のおじいちゃん？みゆきも会いたい。楽しみにしてるね、パパ。
But considering my tireless work schedule, I had no idea when I'd be able to fulfill that promise. Still, I made a promise to Miyuki, so I'd have to do my best to follow through. She was never the type to keep asking when. Apparently, my in-laws told her it's annoying when you ask that. She's a really smart, really kind girl, and I'm disappointed that I have to spend so much time away from her. After walking for a while, we reached a larger road and were able to see a wider area around us. Oh, a chapel. Then I spotted a small church off in the distance we were headed.
Oh.
Seeing the building covered in white snow gave it a majestic atmosphere and gave me a pious feeling. Someone once told me that snow was the breath of God, gathering all the world's sorrows into heaven, then falling from the sky. So, this weather was proof that God had forgiven her sin. I wanted to believe that.
あ、赤坂さん。こっちです。こっち。
お。
I turned toward the source of that voice and noticed two women standing in front of the gate, waving vigorously in my direction. For a moment, I wasn't sure who they were, but as I got closer, it all came back to me, and I couldn't help but smile.
お久しぶりです、赤坂さん。来てくれてありがとうございます。
ご無沙汰してます、佐伯さん。あ、まだ 佐伯でよかったんでしょうか？
ええ、どっちでも。なんでしたらエリザベスでもアントワネットでも私的には OK ですよ。
それは名前だ。名字じゃないっての。今日は遠路はるばる本当にありがとうございます。
So, what are you two doing here? Did you two become nuns or something?
雪で電車とかが止まらないかってちょっと心配してました。
ええ、早めに出て正解でしたよ。あ、遅くなりましたが、今日はご招待いただきましてありがとうございます。
ありがとうございます。
Invitation. Wait, invitation? Church? Is somebody getting married? Miyuki followed my lead and bowed her head as she said that. When the two of them saw that, they shouted, "Cute!" in a shrill voice and crouched down to start talking to my daughter.
あ、お二人とは会えますか？
ええ、まだ平気です。今は新郎の方が走り回って大変みたいだから、先に新婦に会ってあげてください。
わかりました。
娘さんなら私たちが。お名前なんていうの？赤坂みゆきです。えらいえらい。じゃあみゆきちゃん、お姉ちゃんたちとあっちで雪だるま作ろっか。
After that exchange, the two of them walked to the garden of Miyuki. I thanked the two of them for taking care of her, then made my way to the church.
どうぞ。
Natsumi's here. I heard a gentle voice and a bell from inside the room beckoning me, so I opened the door. She was sitting alone by the windowsill, but as soon as she saw my face, she stood up with a bright smile.
赤坂さん、来てくださったんですか？
ええ、ご無沙汰して申し訳ありません。今日はご招待いただきありがとうございます。
You invited him. Natsumi, are you getting married?
いや、おめでとうございますかな。
ありがとうございます。
Yeah. Congratulations. I think that basically confirms it in my eyes. So, is the groom Akira by any chance? Then she pointed to one of the empty chairs and said, "Please have a seat."
アキラくんももうすぐ戻ってくると思います。
Yeah, I think it is.
彼も赤坂さんには会いたがっていましたから。
それは嬉しいですね。あいにく大石さんはちょっと体調を崩されたらしくて、とても残念がっていました。あなたたちにはくれぐれもよろしくと。
そうですか。残念ですが仕方ないですよね。後でお手紙を送ります。
Suddenly, Natsumi and I turned our eyes out the window at the same time and enjoyed the snowy scenery. From here, we could see Saiki-san and Tomoko-san playing with Miyuki in the garden.
お子さんですか？
ええ、すみません。予定にはなかったのですが、どうしても一緒に行きたいと聞かなかったもので。
全然気にしないでください。気にする人なんていませんから。
私の他には誰が？
式の参列者は千里ちゃんとたまこちゃんだけです。あとはいません。あきらくんのご両親も彼が気を使って。
Well, given who the bride is, I mean, I can't exactly fault them for being worried about attending. and just having reservations about the whole thing in general. I mean, I really can't fault them for that, but at the same time, I also know that by all appearances, Natsumi's got her shit together. So it's just a real shitty situation no matter how you slice it, for everybody involved.
そうですか。
I was able to understand what she was implying without asking any other details. Normally, the groom calls on the relatives to unite the family. However, there was nobody left in the bride's immediate family, and the groom's relatives were probably already familiar with the bride's poor public reputation. And of course, it would be difficult for the bride to call on her distant relatives, because anyone who came would be from Hinamizawa.
アキラくんたちは絶対に言いませんけど、私知ってるんです。今日の式のことで、私がご両親にご挨拶に伺う前、ずいぶん時間をかけて、それもアキラくんだけじゃなく、千里ちゃんもたまこちゃんも必死になって駆けずり回って協力してくれて。
そうですか。
About 5 years had passed since the incident. Natsumi Kimiyoshi voluntarily came back to Kakuji Station for friends and turned herself in. In a subsequent trial, the results of her psychiatric examination came out. A doctor submitted a report saying that her judgment was impaired by her mental illness. Thankfully, they were able to make a great use of all the work Chief Inspector Minai put into researching her medication, so they were able to convince the prosecutors of her mental condition. Plus, her friends offered testimony in her defense. As a result, Natsumi Kimiyoshi was declared not guilty in the eyes of the court. Even so, not everything could be restored. The fact that she committed murder and tried to hide it was permanently attached to Natsumi Kimiyoshi's reputation. It became impossible to live in her old town, so she moved to a distant, secluded town. And fortunately, she didn't move there alone. After that, Natsumi Kimiyoshi was admitted to a psychiatric hospital and given treatment so intense it was like being bled. The counseling, medication, and rehabilitation continued for several years. It goes without saying, she received a lot of support from her two friends and the groom, Akira Todo. I'm sure it wasn't smooth sailing. It can't be easy to talk about all the hardships she suffered over the years. But even so, she did her best. And finally, she was able to meet him like this today.
少し前まで私ずっと死ぬことばかり考えていました。自分の家族を殺して自分の友達や恋人の人生、私に生きてる資格はあるのかなって。まして幸せになるなんてこと私には。
君吉さん、あ、いや。
I quickly noticed my error and suddenly stopped myself. Then,
東堂夏美、この名前多分一生慣れないと思います。だけど
Then, Natsumi Kimyu, Todo, raised her head to look up at me. I could still see the grief in her expression, but even so, she smiled. At least, she tried to smile.
死ねませんよね。こんなにも私のことを大切に思ってくれる人がいて、それなのに自分だけ楽な道を選ぶなんてこと絶対にできない。しちゃいけないと思います。だから私これ以上幸せにはなれなくてもいい。だってもう今が幸せなんだから。その分誰かの私のことを思ってくれる人のために幸せのお手伝いをしたい。今はそう思っています。
ええ、それでいいと思います。あなたはまだ生きるべきなんです。
ありがとうございます。
As she listened to my words, Natsumi wiped the tears from her eyes. Then,
伝えたかったな。
え？
私を強く励ましてくれたあの刑事さんに今の気持ちを。それだけが私の心残りです。
later, a small ceremony was conducted in the chapel. What a very cute-looking bride and groom. If you don't mind me calling you cute, Akira. The priest held the Bible in his hand as he delivered his speech. The only people watching were her two friends, my daughter and I. Thinking about it that way, it seemed like a lonely affair. Even so, I felt fortunate to be in attendance, as I could feel the happiness in the air clinging to my entire body.
では、誓いの指輪の交換を。
After the priest's declaration, the groom looked nervous as he pulled out the ring. Then, he slid it onto her ring finger, as he swore to spend the rest of his life with her. Natsumi gazed into him at that moment. Was she afraid? Was she sad? She trembled in embarrassment, guilt, and excitement as she faintly began moving her mouth to speak.
アキラくん。
Still, Natsumi pushed herself to smile. They gently embraced each other as lovers. Then, still holding hands, she pulled back to face her friends. For the people who encouraged and supported her, she quickly flashed them a genuine smile.
変わってしまった彼女の世界はとても残酷なものだけど、希望はある。
Yuki was staring at me with a vacant expression, so I turned to face her with a look of determination. I guess a day will come when I have to see this girl off too. When that day comes, I hope I can send her off with a smile. When that day comes, I hope my daughter will have enough memories of happy days to be able to smile like this from the bottom of her heart. Yes, that's what I decided, as the warm sentiment of the two people in front of me carried through to me. New tips unlocked. A letter from Madoka. There's still more to go? Come on, man. Greetings. How are you doing? As usual, we're doing fine in this lovely weather. The people in the village were a little aloof when we first moved here, but we've become good friends now. A lot of people came to celebrate Kaoru-san's 60th birthday last month. Oh, that's right. Kaoru-san was really embarrassed about it, but we dressed him in a red chanchako jacket, like you do at his 60th birthday. I half-jokingly told him it'll last a lifetime, right? When he put it on. But it actually looked pretty good on him. We had a good laugh about it. I'll try to send a picture next time, okay? I also packaged some fresh summer oranges along with this letter. We harvested them this year, so please enjoy them together. I finally become older than Sis was. It's a shame that my child never had an opportunity to call someone aunt. But surprisingly, turning 30 wasn't as bad as I expected. Does it upset you to hear that, Akasaka-san? These days, I've been able to stand over Sis's grave without crying. I originally wished that her grave was closer to Mom and Dad's, but now I'm starting to think this was the right decision. Sis was always working her hardest, going forward at full power, without taking a moment to breathe. But now that there's nothing left for her to do in this world, I think it's nice that she can rest quietly. Oh, but if there are police officers in heaven, maybe she's running around up there now? Also, Akasaka-san, going forward, please don't blame yourself for what happened to Sis. I told Kruya-chan the same thing too. It's not anybody's fault. Sis was just carrying out her duties, so it's wrong to blame anyone other than the culprit. It was the nature of her position. I want the two of you to understand that. Instead, if you could redirect those feelings towards solving other cases and keeping the perpetrators off the streets, that would make me happy. Sometimes, Karu-san claps his hands together and apologizes at her grave, saying that his inability to catch the culprit during his tenure at the station is his biggest regret. And each time, I'd smack him as hard as I could. However, thanks to the hard work of Fujita-san and the rest of the team, they were finally able to catch the suspect last year. Did they now? Sure, that's not just some scapegoat that the big old conspirators set up. So, I think Sis would be glad to know that everyone did their best and refused to give up. So from now on, please do your best at work. I understand that the bureaucracy at the Metropolitan Police Department can make it seem impossible to achieve world peace, but Sis and I are praying for your success. So, please take care of yourself. Talk to you later. Monica Yamaoki. Well, I'm glad to hear that life's going pretty well for her, all things considered. So, what else could we possibly have to sit through after an ending like that, I wonder? Oh. I guess nothing? Huh. I guess nothing. How about that? Well, we're finally here at the ending of this arc. So, I guess I might as well just get my thoughts on the way and what I thought about it. Well, I've been making this criticism pretty clear throughout the last few episodes at this point, but I think my biggest problem with this arc was its pacing, mostly. And besides that, considering that I've completed the main story and know all the answers as to what was going on with the Great Hinamizawa disaster and all the other related mysteries, it felt like a lot of the investigation segments involving the detectives really dragged things out for me, and it's not the story's fault, I would argue, because clearly these arcs were written during a time when the player was not supposed to really know all the stuff that I know just yet. Based on my own understanding of how these arcs were made for the original versions of, like, what, the PlayStation 3 port of Higurashi, because I think that's when these arcs were originally made. The player was supposed to experience them right before getting to the main conclusions for the last few main chapters in the main story, that being number 7 and number 8. So it's not the story's fault that I did things out of order, so to speak. So I can't hold it against it. I can't hold that fact against it too much. But even so, I can't help but felt like it dragged out anyway. Because I mean, once you know the general gist of what's going on, a lot of even if the characters themselves don't know, it still can't help but feel like as though you're just repeating a lot of the same steps that the characters are currently taking at that point in time that you've already taken several times over by that point. So it just feels repetitive by default. And again, I just can't really fault it too much, considering the circumstances and how I've even come to play this particular arc, or any of these arcs for that matter. And I'm sure that's a feeling this is a feeling I'm definitely going to be feeling at different levels as I continue to go through these different console arcs. And I'm hoping it won't feel as severe in the later arcs as it did with this one. But regardless of how bad it is, I'll try not to voice my feelings about it too much, because I mean, what else is there for me to say other than what I've already said? But when it comes to the arc itself, yeah, in isolation along with the preceding arc, I feel like as though this arc really went on a lot longer than it reasonably should have, especially compared to the last arc, in order to get to this point. But again, maybe that's because, like I just said a minute or two ago, maybe the reason it just feels that way, to me, the pacing I mean, is because I experienced this arc out of order, so to speak. So I just want the story to hurry up to get to the parts that had nothing to do with the Great Hinamizawa disaster. Know what I mean? In which case, I guess it just boils down to, well, I can't fault it too much for being what it is, and for me playing it under the circumstances that I've found myself to play it. And I'm just repeating myself at this point. So saying all this out loud and thinking about it now, I'm honestly not sure how much I can really be critical of the pacing here, all things considered, given everything I just laid out. Other than this is probably just a me problem rather than a problem with the story. Speaking of the story, though, I guess there is one aspect of both this arc and the previous arc that, that I definitely want to talk about real quick. And I'm sure there's probably more I'll end up thinking about after I'm done with this video. But I guess the big revelation that Natsumi's family going off the deep end the way it did in the previous arc was in actuality false, and that Natsumi basically created false memories of herself of what happened, and she was the one who actually ended up killing her whole family in that arc. I'm trying to remember if there were any hints that in retrospect that I noticed that could have hinted towards that being what was really going on, and I can't think of anything off the top of my head. And I don't know if that's just because there just wasn't any actual hints that were foreshadowing to the revelations that were had about that arc in this arc, or if they just weren't there at all, and this is just something that the writers threw into this answer arc as just a, I don't know, like just a plot twist that was just thrown in there just for the hell of it. And if it's something like the latter, I will say I've never really been I've really never been a fan of those kind of twists where the story does absolutely nothing to give you any hints or clues whatsoever that the big twist that's trying to set up here is actually coming, or what the nature of the twist is, and it just suddenly thrusts it all on you when you least expect it. No foreshadowing or build up or anything whatsoever. It's just there just to surprise you, mainly, and nothing else. Like, it's one thing to surprise the viewer, or the player in this case, but I think there are ways that you have to go about it to where it may not feel cheaply done, especially depending on the nature of the twist itself and how big it is, and how it meshes with the rest of the story up prior to that point. Does that make sense? Like, I'm not really majorly upset about it. Maybe I should be, if there wasn't any actual foreshadowing that was put in place at all. But that's probably because I just can't, for the life of me, recall any details that I might have missed. It's probably one of those things that I'm probably just going to have to go back at some point in the future and just see for myself, now that I understand what was actually going on in the previous arc towards the end, and see if in hindsight I could see some clues that may have been there that I just completely failed to notice. But if there aren't any, then, well, like I just said, it's kind of a cheap move to just throw in a big twist like that without any build-up whatsoever. Feels more like a gimmick from a writing perspective. Just saying. And finally, I'm glad that Chisato basically told Natsumi off like it was towards the end, and through that brutal honesty, she was able to reach out to her and get her to come to her senses. Because I mean, I was predicting up until this point that this whole thing was just going to end in absolute tragedy, no matter what, given the severity of everything that happened up until that point. So I am pleasantly surprised to see that somehow Chisato managed to find a way to reach out to Natsumi in the end, and get her to finally come back to her senses, and from that point onward help her rebuild as much of a new life for her as she could. Like, I was not expecting that to happen, and I'm pleasantly surprised it did. It's bittersweet, don't get me wrong. I mean, as was pointed out by both myself earlier on in the video and the other characters, I mean, she's got a bad reputation that's likely going to be following her the rest of her life, and probably cause indefinite strain between herself and the rest of Akira's family, and her own extended relatives that may still be alive. Things haven't been and aren't going to be easy for her from that point onward. But all the same, she's made serious efforts to fix herself, to atone for her crimes, and is trying to live a happy, peaceful life with the man that she loves. She's basically gone through her redemption. She's basically gone, and arguably still is, going through her redemption arc. And that's honestly the best that I can hope for, and the most I would have wanted her to do. So I'm definitely happy about that. It sucks that her whole family ended up having to die, and she now has to live that reputation. It definitely sucks, but things could have ended a lot worse for both her and everyone else. but thankfully it didn't. And I think that's all I really want to say about this for now. So I guess next time, we're going to start the next arc in the Higurashi console arcs. So, with all that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this latest episode of Higurashi and Nikai console arcs. If you did, and you want to see more content from me, feel free to hit that like button and subscribe. I will see you all next time. Take care.